What's up? This is Alex Chu coming at you with another episode. This episode, I want to talk about me playing Monopoly, okay? But I play Monopoly, I learned something. I learned that, China and United States, okay? And I learned that United States will eventually fail, okay? Based on Monopoly principles, And China will eventually take over the whole world. And I don't know. Anyway, but before I talk about that, I want to tell you my name's Alex Chu. I'm the guy who invented physical mortality rings. These are rings that you put on your small fingers during sleep. You wear them, you don't age anymore. You become physically immortal. For example, hey, in 1 month, I'll be 55. If you look at me, look, I'm still pretty skinny. I'm sorry, hold on, look at that. Look at that. Look at how skinny I am. I'm only 155 pounds, okay? I'm 55. I'm almost 55 years old. 1 month, right? And if you go to my website livemuchlonger.com, you can see lots of testimonials from Amazon and Amazon customer reviews. Most of them give me 4 stars or 5 stars. Sorry. Most of them give me 4 star, 5 stars. If you want to look like me when you're 55, okay? You go to livemuchlonger.com, okay? Learn more about these rings. Yeah. Anyway, I've been playing Monopoly for about like a month now. I don't know, a month or 2 months. And I'm hooked. I play it every day. But one thing I learned about Monopoly is the principle. You understand? And I think China and United States is a perfect example of monopoly. And China will become the ultimate winner. They're going to win everything, okay? And United States won't, they're not even have a grip. But anyway, I just want to, here's the clip. You check the clip. You all understand what I'm saying. Okay, these days I've been playing Monopoly using all sorts of software. Right now I'm using Sega Genesis to play Monopoly, okay? And one thing very valuable I learned from playing Monopoly is about China and United States, I'm talking about the way how they run their country. United States is capitalism, right? It's run by democracy. And China is dictatorship, China is not communism anymore, but it's just a dictatorship, and it's they run it. They're very flexible. They run it any way they like. And I realized something. China and United States is like two players playing Monopoly, and China's the one that has all the hotels and houses, and United States, all we have is cash. All we have is petrodollar. We don't have any hotel. No. We have maybe one hotel or maybe one house, but China has all of it. For example, if you see in this picture right here, you see all these hotels. The red ones are hotels. Okay, Monopoly works like this. You see the green ones are houses right here. Green ones, these are houses, okay? Monopoly work like this. Let's say there's like 5 or 6 players, right? Everybody start from the beginning, like right here. And they toss the dices, right? And if someone is lucky enough to land on all 3, for example, you see these 3 properties right here, they are all orange. This is all orange, right? If you're lucky enough to land on all orange, right? It doesn't matter how many times you go through these, you go through the board. You toss the dice and then you go through the board. If you're lucky enough to land on all 3 properties that are orange, then you can start building houses or hotels on here. And every time you build a house or hotel, people pay a lot more. If somebody land on your property, they pay a lot more. If they land on your property, you don't have anything, you don't have any house or hotel on your property, they pay you like a few dollars, like $10, $20, right? But if you have a house or hotel on your property, they land on it, ooh, they have to pay like maybe hundreds of dollars, even thousands of dollars. And that's how they go broke. That's how you win the game. you make your opponents go broke, and then you win the game. You understand? And I feel Monopoly taught me a lesson. I feel like this is like we Americans are like a player that has all the dollars. We have lots and lots of cash in the bank. Okay, we have like $1,500 in the bank. Okay, see this Monopoly. They always start with $1,500. Everybody gets $1,500, right? And at the end, the one who wins the game, basically got all the money. We Americans, I feel like we don't have that many properties. We don't have that many hotels. But the Chinese, they have all the hotels and houses and everything. But we have more money. We have $1,500, and Chinese, they only have like maybe $100 or $200 in their account. But they have all the houses and the hotels. So who's gonna win, right? Well, it looks good from the outside that, we Americans have all the dollars. We have the petrodollar. The whole world, they rotate around the American system. They have to use dollar to buy oil, right? So we have the petrodollar. But if you look in the long run, the Chinese are winning, okay? Because they have the monopoly of the whole world, basically. Chinese, they produce everything. They produce 90% of all the products that you see around you, right? They produce kitchenware, they produce, I don't know, motorcycles, bicycles, you name it, buses, cars, and everything is like produced in China nowadays, right? And then they also produce food, food, grain, fish. They have lots of fish farms in China right now. It's like they're producing everything, so they're the ones that have all the houses and hotels. We only have dollar, okay? We only have dollars. So in the long run, we cannot beat them. You understand? Because if we're not lucky, one day we land on one of their houses, or we land on one of their property that has a hotel, right? We're gonna spend all the dollar to, just to pay our way through. So, I think that's the reason why I used to like democracy when I was a young man. Back in the days, China was broke. Back in the 1980s, 1970s, China was nothing. Their GDP is not even bigger than Italy. Their GDP can be compared to the size of Italy's. But now they have the second biggest GDP, right? But they are the most productive country in the world. So it's like playing Monopoly. You don't have that much money in the bank, but you have all the hotels and houses. It surrounds the entire board game. And then another player, he has lots of cash, but no hotel, no house. Who's gonna win? Of course, the guy who has the hotel and houses win, right? At the end, if you struggle long enough, you're gonna win. So I think democracy is losing. You understand? Back in the days, democracy was working because China did not exist. I mean, China did exist, but they didn't have the monopoly yet. Back in the days. Back in the days, we're just competing with a whole bunch of losers, like the Europeans. We're competing with the Japanese, Germans, but they were all democracy. You understand? We have very similar system. But now we're competing with Chinese, and they're not democracy. They don't follow our rules. They don't follow the rules of democracy. I feel like democracy is sort of like a auto transmission. Like let's say you own a car. It's a race car. You want your car to be a race car, but then your car is running on auto transmission. In China, their car is manual transmission. Okay, They have a lot more control. You know, in the racetrack, you need a manual transmission. There's no way you can win using auto transmission because auto transmission is too slow. You understand? You can't. I mean, you need to. You need to have a car that can drive from 0 to 60 within 2 seconds, right? If you want to win the race. And some, when you're on the racetrack, right? And some, professional sports car racers, they know how to shift their manual transmission so well that they can shift from the second gear all the way to the fourth gear without going through the third gear. Sometimes you could do that. If you know how to shift, you can drive your car very, very fast, I mean, you can go from 0 to 60 in no time. But when you're driving an automatic transmission, you can't do that, right? Automatic transmission is just too slow, you understand? It starts slow, it ends slow. It's just too slow. So if you're racing, if you have you have the same engine, same brand of a car, but if the transmission is different, let's say you're driving automatic transmission, the other guy is driving a manual, there's no way you can win, right? See, the other guy knows what he's doing, okay? If he's a professional race car driver, then there's no way he can win. Because the guy has more control. He's using a manual transmission. In United States, democracy is like an automatic transmission, It's slow because we have to go through Congress, right? Somebody's proposed a bill, it has to pass through the Senate. And then it has to pass through the House. If it doesn't pass, then we might have to compromise. You have to negotiate, right? Both sides negotiate. And at the end, the bill is not the original bill anymore. Can you imagine if Beethoven wants to compose, let's say he wants to compose the 10th Symphony. Let's say he's not dead yet. He wants to compose the 10th Symphony. But then his orchestra has already been unionized, okay? His orchestra has been unionized and everybody gets the vote. Beethoven wrote something, right? Beethoven composed a score, and all his members, the instrument players, they come and they say, we get to vote on this because your orchestra has been unionized. Can you imagine that? How can Beethoven compose anything, right? He's a genius. But from now on, all his composition will go through a vote. Like, I don't like this portion, I don't like that portion, change that portion a little bit, change this portion a little bit. Can Beethoven compose any good music under this condition? No, of course not. Same as the United States, democracy is killing us right now. Just like what I said, back in the days was fine, okay, when China did not exist. Because we're just competing with a bunch of losers. We're competing with Europeans, we're competing with Japanese, they are all under democracy. And they are just as slow as us. Everybody is driving an automatic transmission. So you don't feel the hustle. You understand? You don't feel the pressure. But right now, we have a real race car that's using a manual transmission. And that race car is blowing everybody away. It's China. They are not under democracy. They are a lot more flexible. You understand? The leader, Xi Jinping, right? He gets to decide what to do. Like, without Senate, without House, whatever he say is the law. Dictatorship is sort of scary, because if you don't know, let's say you don't know how to run your country, you're gonna end up like Kim Jong-un, You're gonna end up like North Korea. Fucking nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to travel there, right? They're cut off from the rest of the world, and they're like, it's basically North Korea is a laughing stock. North Korea is like the laughing stock of the whole world. But if the dictator is professional, he knows what he's doing, then it would be just like China, And it's a very formidable adversary. Very, very formidable adversary. So I don't know. I think America is losing in the long run. You understand? Because China right now is they have the democracy. I mean, they have the entire, just like Monopoly. They have the whole board game covered up with their houses and hotels. They don't have that much dollar. Okay, they don't have the petrodollar yet. But the whole world is covered in Chinese products. You understand? They produce everything. I think uh, petro yuan, okay, Chinese yuan, petro yuan is sooner or later. It's going to be sooner or later. When we lose everything, when dollar loses its value, sooner or later the whole world is going to be, the it's going to run on yuan, Chinese yuan. So I think that democracy, we have to get rid of democracy, really. But I understand the danger of democracy. Okay, the reason why we have democracy in the first place is to avoid dictator like Kim Jong Un. Okay, avoid a dictator like Hitler or even Stalin or even Lenin. These are bad people. You understand? Especially when your dictator is a moron, right? Don't understand anything about the economy and just basically run the whole country into the hole, run the whole country into the drain. Then, yeah, there's downside to dictatorship. I understand that, but the problem is right now our adversary is China, and they're a dictatorship, but I mean their leaders are so smart. You understand? And how do you compete with that? I just don't get it. I think United States will one day, I don't know, based on this board game that I'm playing, right? Monopoly. I think United States, sooner or later, it's going to be taken over by China. Sooner or later. So I suggest we do something to get rid of democracy and just try dictatorship. Or maybe incorporation. How about that? My idea is maybe we don't run a full dictatorship. We run a corporation, sort of. Corporation. Um, I don't know. Incorporate the entire United States. Like in the future, we don't vote, okay? We don't vote based on how many citizens we have. We vote based on money. Like, how many shares did you buy? Let's say the entire United States is incorporated, and people can finally buy shares of United States stock. You understand? If you care about this country, you buy shares of this country, and you can vote. You understand? Let's say you bought 1,000 shares, then you have 1,000. You have 1,000 votes. So rich people can have more voting power. Let's say Elon Musk, if he buys United States shares, let's say he buy like 10 million shares, then he has 10 million voting power. So in the future, maybe we should incorporate United States to make it. You still could vote, so there's no dictator. You understand? But we only allow smart people to vote. Like rich people like Elon Musk, or somebody who really cares about a country, who's willing to spend money, to buy the shares. We should not allow like lazy people or freeloaders to vote. You understand? See, if you're so cheap, you're so poor, or you don't care about a country, you didn't buy shares of the United States, then you should not vote. No votes, no shares. I mean, no shares. If you don't have any shares, then you don't get to vote. It should be like that. But anyway, that's my thought. Have a nice day.